We'll call the General Government Committee meeting to order.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Any discussion on the agenda? Not all's in favor?
Aye.
Carries. How about our minutes from March 13th?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from March 13th.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Not all's in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Are there any public comments? Are there any supervisors not seated as committee members here that have any information? All right, we'll have a quarterly review of the investments.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Easter Monday. I apologize. We'll need to go skip the first couple of slides here on your handout, and also on the deck, because I have the agenda items out of order in presentation. For some reason, my fingers aren't working. Let's go just a couple more slides, please. Well, second. One, two more. Next one. Okay, so you'll recall back in January, we provided the first investment update, probably in a while, to this committee. And I'm just going to reprise that today with an update. Just a few reminders. I don't know if you all are familiar, maybe you are, but our investment advisors, it's PMA investment advisors, and P and M stand for prudent man. And I think they no longer use that, because when they started the company back in the 1830s or something, that might have been appropriate, but maybe not so much anymore. For any county, really any municipality, any unit of government, there's usually three investment goals: preservation of capital, liquidity, and return. So we'll talk about each of those today a little bit. We're going to, at the very end of the brief presentation, come back to some discussion of funds, but we're going to go sideways just a little bit and talk about where our money is and what it earns. So we'll go to the next slide. Oh, that's interesting. This is when PowerPoint isn't your friend, but thankfully we have this handy printout. So if you go,
It's okay on there.
okay, yeah. When we think about our instruments, the three tools that we use for our investment, cash is not considered an investment. We've got about $31 million in invested dollars. A very small amount of that, about 1.7 million, is in CDs. In January, you all asked for some information about maturities, and we'll get to that in a second, how long out these investments go. So that's about 4% of our total. Over half is in cash management accounts, and a little less than half are in treasury bills. The returns on these, they're all pretty good right now. If you want to think back 3 or 4 years, earning close to 5% on cash management accounts, a little under 4% across our CDs, and about 3% on our T-bills across all those. Any questions so far?
Why would we have so much in T-bills? Why wouldn't we have it in the cash management accounts?
That's a great question. So treasury bills are backed by the full faith of the federal government of the United States. So they're the absolutely most secure investments that we can have. We're very limited in what we can invest in as a county. CDs historically have been safe. There've been a couple of stories in the last month or two about banks that have failed and what's happened to the deposits there. We've recently asked PMA to update us on what they think about the security of our investments. If you go back and look at our 2021 audit report, which is the most recent, the audit report says across all of our investments, we have no custodial security risk. That means the auditor thought we had no risk across any of these investments. We'll learn what the auditor says for 2022 pretty soon because they'll be out on April 24th. We've asked PMA directly whether we should be concerned about risk here or here, and they say pretty much not. I'm not fully convinced by that. I've had a conversation with the administrator about it. We're going to have an even closer look at the risk levels that we're carrying across our investments. That's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, so next slide. So I think I mentioned back in January, we're in this interesting period with investments where if you want to go for the long haul, you make a fair amount less than if you're just investing short term. And those are, again, pretty good rates. And you might ask, why would you even consider CDs right now if the treasury bills are returning that? But this general phenomenon is called inversion, where the long-term rates are lower than the short-term rates. Next slide. So we're going to see some data up here in the corner. Claire, is it possible you could drag that down? I mean, there's a lot of compression between the cash management account return and what's in T-bills right now. And so if you have any concern about security, why wouldn't you buy T-bills right now? Particularly if you can manage your cash well enough so you got your projects planned, you don't have longer than a 4-month horizon, 3 or 4 month horizon on that. So I've been working with Rod Polk and with Mo to get a list of our capital projects so we can kind of understand what our outflow is going to need to be. We may start moving more of our money out of cash management into T-bills if we can manage that flow okay. Next slide. So good question from from January. So what's our maturities on these various instruments? This is just a pictorial representation of that 1.7 million or so. We've got a CD that's maturing here in just a little bit. These are 1 year, so we got about 9 months on these, and we'll take a look at those CDs as they come up. Amanda and I look at those pretty frequently. Any questions about those CD maturities? If not, we'll go to the T-bills. So now we're going to start rotating back to the conversation of the fund balances just a little bit. So we've got of ARPA dollars, and we'll talk about the total amount of that in a second. We got about 4.1 at maturity in ARPA, and you can see this blue line indicates today. And so we've got some T-bills that are going to mature real quick. We'll have to make a decision about those with ARPA funds. Same here with this T-bill that's in the health fund and this T-bill here that's in the general fund. So you might ask, why do we have this cascade like that with health? It's because we have this plan with our health fiduciary to basically release a certain amount of that health fund every year to support health-related expense for the county. So this goes out to 2027, June or July of 27. So we'll keep that slope going like that with those, in all likelihood with T-bills, unless some other instrument makes more sense over time. Does this help people see kind of the maturity? Does it answer the maturity question we had last time? Okay, great. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the actual agenda item where we were talking about, where our funds are. And so our dollars are in terms of funds. Again, about half is in the general fund. We're split between health and ARPA. This is that money we use to pay down health-related expense. This is the money that we have been using for special projects. And much of that's already obligated. So that curve where we're spending it down, we'll have to make sure the timing of those ARPA projects matches the release of the T-bills. Yeah.
Question on the health fund. Are we just trying to challenge my memory, which is really weak, but is that fund kind of balancing with what we're returning and what we're spending?
It was. Okay. In fact, for a number of years, we were putting more into it than we were taking out because as a self-funded institution, we self fund our healthcare plan. We had a healthy employee base, but we had some real hits back in July and August. And we actually have about $1.5 million in health-related expense that hasn't been paid out of that fund yet. that
That's
needs
why
to
it
be.
still shows at that level.
That's correct. And we're waiting on the T-bills to mature. And then basically, we're going to put them in the general fund where we pay, there's a negative balance in the general. We have drawn a loan from the general fund in the health fund.
Till the
looks
T-bills
subsidized
mature.
right now. Yeah, exactly. So any questions about that?
A little one, it might be off topic, so I apologize if it is, but so here we're looking at it and we're specifically segmenting and designating ARPA funds. But we've also had discussions where we've said, this is no longer ARPA money, this money is in the general fund. Is there a certain point where like, that's not gonna be segmented off?
Yeah, so we have until the last day of 2024 to tell the federal government what we're doing with that money. We segregated it a while back. We can think of it, as soon as it's obligated, we can think of it as being in the general fund. And since we've already obligated a big chunk of it, conceptually, it is in the general fund. Now, we write these reports every 6 months to the federal government where we tell them what we're planning to do and what we've already done with that money. And so we have to tell them what we're planning to do by the end of 2024. By the end of 2026, we have to have actually spent it. So this should, sorry, I've been pointing at health. ARPA should, when we're here in 3 years, we won't be talking about ARPA anymore. It'll be just gone.
Okay.
But residual may still be in the general fund, but as an investment category, it won't exist. And it is a little confusing. I have to remind myself every time I go back and look at the numbers. So any questions? Okay, we'll go to the first agenda item if it's okay. So all the way back to the top. Sorry about this. Just a quick review on where we stand with policy. Back in January, I keep saying, now we're talking, this is April, right? So we're talking about March. Okay, when I was up here in March, I mentioned where we stood with the IT policy. At that point, it was being reviewed by the IT team itself. Right now, it's being reviewed by division directors, and thank you for those of you who have commented on it very much. With respect to our financial policy, we're looking at that right now in terms of what other counties are doing with their financial policy, sorry, investment policy. Are we missing anything? Must be Monday morning because I'm getting my words mixed up. With the investment policy, we're looking at the Government Finance Officers Association's recommendations for investments. And we can see some weaknesses looking at our investment policy at the county level versus what they're recommending. And I'll let our HR director talk a little bit about our HR policy after she's introduced. And she's, I think, the next agenda item or one down the list a little bit. That's what I have in terms of policy updates. Any questions for me? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll have an update regarding recruitment and retention.
Would you be able to introduce Kim? Sure.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you up now?
Where we at?
I thought this was our recruitment and retention.
Did we miss something?
Oh, we thought that was about HR. Can we have a combo?
Yeah, absolutely,
agenda
absolutely. Absolutely. So Supervisor Ryan would asked about what we do for recruitment and retention at the Sheriff's Office, and I'm excited to have a discussion about this because it's more challenging than ever to recruit men and women for law enforcement. And honestly, if you saw the news this weekend, right in our backyard in Barron County, we lost 2 fellow officers. So that's a setback. It always is. The ones that do this job recognize the risks, and we continue forward even in times like this. But our hearts are heavy this week. That's a fact. Currently, I just made a quick bullet point paper here. And I want to just touch on a few things with that, and then I want to show you the video that we made for recruitment. It's just a couple minutes, so it'll be brief. We're currently 2 positions down in the jail. We're 1 down in field services, and we're 1 down in the comm center. And you know, anytime we go short-staffed heading into summer, it's concerning because it puts added responsibility on the workers you have. We have a situation in our dispatch center where it's tough to get their time off because we're short. We were at full staff for about 3 months and thinking, hey, the world's getting back to normal. And then we had a resignation 2 weeks ago. So it is concerning. And the biggest hurdle we see in a lot of these positions, it's the hours, the nights, weekends, holidays. That's really unappealing. And we don't have a choice in that. I mean, we're a 24/7 operation, so we can't just we're closed due to staffing like a restaurant or private business can. We are there regardless of what happens. For recruitment efforts, some of the things we've done, we did produce a video to showcase these positions, and we found that that was somewhat effective. We had a few people that applied for the jail because they saw the video on Facebook and they thought, that looks exciting, similar to our other positions. So Claire, if you could play that patrol video, I'll just show the
job in helping. I didn't bring any guns. Protecting the people that can't protect themselves. I don't know any other greater purpose that you can have in life.
You have to be on your A game every day. A lot of people, it's their worst days when they're meeting you. And you always have to keep that in mind and not let outside things interfere with you to affect your performance with people, with the public. Our relationship with the community is very strong. I think they really appreciate what we do. And in today's world, that's kind of can be challenging depending on where you're at. But the people here certainly appreciate what we do day to day.
Some of the things that I think about in reference to my role in this community is it's being a mentor to young kids. So I try and get involved with anything that I can. You know, we typically do things outside of our work that brings the community in.
Yeah, so every other place that I've ever worked, I've never lived directly in that jurisdiction. Now, you know, I check on from my driveway, I check off from my driveway, and I'm working the entire time in between there. I love that aspect of being able to actually make an impact, you know, in your neighborhood, in your community.
I love Polk County truly because we've got so much support here. We have every day, we have people who are sending us cards, emails, letters, telling us how much they support us. And it truly makes a difference for me wanting to be here.
We have 1,000 square miles that we have to cover basically. So you end up really leaning on the people that you work with, and we get to do it. We get to do it all. You will go to SWAT calls, even if you're not on SWAT. You will be at barricaded subjects. You know, you get to do all of that in addition to helping a family through hard times.
There isn't a call too big or a call too small that we can't handle. The Polk County Sheriff's Department will give you the opportunity to be whatever you want to be in law enforcement.
This is an opportunity to live in a community that has everything you need. And also working in an honorable profession and for a department with some of the best men and women in law enforcement.
I absolutely love my job. I wouldn't have it any other way. So it's stressful, it's, you know, intimidating at times, but it's so much fun. And I've learned so much being here in Polk County.
All right, so we produced that to promote. It's been a trend in law enforcement to try to promote the product you have, and we feel really strongly about this community and this agency. So we also had one for jail and dispatch, similar, just to really highlight the the exciting parts of the job and captivate that kid out there that's looking for a career. And, you know, we share these on social media, on YouTube and whatnot. And that's a trend nationwide. So really excited about those videos. We've done that now. We've had them for about a year. And we did see a slight uptick with jail and dispatch for that. Any questions on the video?
Uptick in applications?
Yes. Yep. And we asked, where did you see that? Or what led you? That's one of the interview questions, is what sparked your interest in applying for this position? And we had someone actually say, you know, I saw the video and I really was intrigued. And that person had worked at another private business in the county and completely career shift mid-age. So I'm really excited about that. You know, they mentioned a little bit in the video, but we try to do a lot of community outreach to promote a positive image. This past weekend, we held our Easter egg hunt at the fairgrounds, and wildly successful, hundreds of kids, 10,000 eggs we put out. And they're literally picked up in like 3 minutes, which wows me. But anyway, we also, this May, we do a career fair where we'll bring some of our equipment and we'll invite the jail and dispatch to come, and we'll play these videos on a TV at the career fair. And then we have officers there to talk about the positions. And these are kids from middle school to high school. And that is really a good audience to go after, because a lot of them are undecided in their career paths. So we try to hit that up. We do work with county HR to try to speed up the process. You know, when I got hired back in the day, it was about a 6-month process to get hired. You had to apply, then a few weeks later, you took a test, and then you got the results back from the test, and then you went through a series of interviews, and then a background, and then a psychological, and it was really a setback. So working with HR, we've been able to speed the process up. In fact, we don't test anymore. We just get the pool of applicants and we do the interviews, because honestly, if you had people come up to take a test, you would get nobody probably. That's almost gone away now. Some of our current staff are instructors at the tech school. So they participate in the recruit academies. And so that's a good way to pluck some talent. So we encourage them to do that. And we've developed instructors so that we do have an eye on what's up and coming in the tech schools. And we try to, you know, pull from that pool. And then we've adapted to trends and scheduling. About 5 years ago, we went to 12-hour shifts. And as a employee back then, I hated the thought of that. I did. But the new generation really values going to that 12-hour shift because they get so many more days off per year. And that's really what they're concerned about, is getting that additional time. So thank goodness I missed that. I never had to work the 12s, but the ones that are up and coming, if we wouldn't have changed to that, we were facing losing employees, because all the counties around us had switched to that 12-hour schedule, and that's what everybody wanted. So that had some growing pains. And I think long-term that has hurt us a little bit as far as coverage. You know, and it also hurts the special assignments. So we have school resource, court security, rec patrol, some of the jobs that aren't the 12-hour shifts. And it's hard to fill those. I've had to force people, the low person, into some of those roles, because the patrol schedule is so much more desirable, to never work more than 3 days on, to have that additional 60 to 70 days off per year. So then to try to get someone to come back and work Monday through Friday is really hard. Where in my era, everybody fought to get that chance to finally get some normal life. So those are the trends. Now with retention efforts, I want to just touch on, you know, there is currently a wage study underway, and that's important because we have to be competitive on wage. You know, whether we like it or not, we see people leave us to go to other counties for not as expected crazy amount of money, just a slight increase, and they'll go. Not so much in the patrol. What's that? Other fields, absolutely. I know the governor proposed potential $34 an hour pay starting wage for prison guards. And I know that's in the budget process. And if that happens, we could potentially lose a good share of our jailers that would go work for the prisons, because that's a substantial wage increase. So we got to watch these trends in that, you know, and I want to thank you for being engaged in this. We do have up-to-date cutting-edge equipment, and believe it or not, Gordon Graham is a pioneer in the world of risk management and law enforcement, and he came from California Highway Patrol. And when he was a young officer, he always tells this story. He had 2 job offers back in the 70s, one to work at Highway Patrol or one to work for San Francisco. And he picked where he went because the Highway Patrol had V8s and the PD had V6s. So believe it or not, equipment matters when you're looking at jobs. So if you have good equipment, You know, and I'm very proud of the equipment we have, and that's a testament to the support we get financially from the board here is, you know, we do have nice things. We're not making people drive broken down, beat up old squads. We continually turn the squads over and, you know, we try to be as fiscally responsible as we can, but at the end of the day, you got to have nice equipment. So I think we do a really good job at that. But it is hard to keep up in that technology game. I think we're at a point now where our tasers are about to come expired and we're going to need new tasers. And, you know, that game is ever evolving and it costs a lot of money. So we were able to provide for retention. And this is the first time ever, and I announced that when we did this, but Don Burrows and I were able to provide all our employees a cash bonus this year. And we did that by getting a substantial donation of cash from the St. Croix Tribal Police. Or not the police, the tribe itself. The tribe, part of their gaming compact, they have to gift money. So they gifted the sheriff's office some money, and we, instead of buying some party atmosphere or something, we decided let's give our employees a bonus, and that was very well received. And Don and I did not take a bonus. We wanted to, to see our employees get the most that we could. And I announced to him, I said, look, I've been a government employee for 28 years. This is probably never going to happen again. It was a one-time unique opportunity, but the private sector does that all the time. You know, they recognize their employees. And I guess I would say, looking back, if we ever had an opportunity like through the COVID situation, if there was ever that opportunity again, to maybe look at rewarding the employees for their hard work, because just about all my staff had to come in every day and work through COVID. And a lot of people were able to just work remote or avoid, we worked every day through that pandemic. And I think that was a missed opportunity perhaps to do some of that. Training opportunities. We really try hard to get our people to good training. The trend for up and coming leaders, we like to send them to the leadership and police organizations. It's LPO for short. That's a really great, it's by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It's a leadership course and it's a 3-week-long West Point level course. And we try to get all our up and coming leadership to that. Training, that's another way to keep your employees happy, is to have a training plan for them. And law enforcement gives you a lot of opportunity to specialize in an area. And if someone has that desire to say, work towards a career in investigations, well, we can kind of, funnel some training that way. And that largely is good bang for your buck. There's also, it's unique to work at a sheriff's office because of the advancement opportunities and the special job assignments. That is one of the hooks we have for recruitment. If you go to work at a small town police department on day 1 in year 30, you're likely going to be doing the same thing. But if you come and work at a sheriff's office, we have so many different roles, from the school resource to the court security, to patrol, SWAT team, canine positions. We really have some diverse positions in our agency, and that is really unique for sheriffs. That's what appealed to me when I started my career, is all the different, I got paid to go drive a snowmobile, a 4-wheeler, and in a boat. I thought, what can't get any better than this? Staffing concerns. Again, I touched on this. If we work short in dispatch, we stress our employees that we really got to find some leverage in that to find some additional help. And I'm working with the administrative staff here and HR to see what we can do there to get some relief. Ultimately, we're short staffed. I mean, we could use 5 more deputies, but I'm a realist. I see the cost of that. And I know we don't have that in the cards. I know that some of the municipalities did a referendum recently and it failed. So the public sentiment isn't there to increase their taxes, so we do really well with what we have. But honestly, when you think of this huge county, almost 1,000 square miles, at times there's 3 deputies out working that whole county. 4 is usually the max. So on a Friday, Saturday night in the summer, we're going to have 4 deputies out. And that's not a lot when you slice it down. Community has strong support. We see this strong support in our community, and you're going to see community outpouring in the next couple of weeks over the loss of these 2 officers, because our community is embedded with our law enforcement. We have a lot of support, but that's not the dialogue that you see nationally. I always use Polk County as this, we're the eye of the hurricane. It's calm and nice where we are, but around us is a whirlwind. Minnesota cops absolutely have a lot of, their morale is low. They don't feel supported. And we're not far, we're lucky where we are. We have that community support, and we work really hard to have that trust and build that trust. But when kids growing up watch the news and they see all these anti-law enforcement stories, it's troubling, and that hurts us more than anything. That has an impact in the tech schools. They see a lot less people pursuing this career. And it isn't just law enforcement, it's ambulance, fire, it's anything that has to do with public service. There's a decline in people that have that community belief. And I don't know how we change that. I think that has to be, you know, we're in trouble. I always say, when about the time I get old enough and need all these services, they're not gonna be there for me. So I'll be waiting for an ambulance for an hour when I'm old. And then there's new legislative trends. I know the sentiment is to get the jail back into protective status retirement, and there's movement on that. That'll be a positive thing. Currently, jail staff would have to work into their 60s, where if they get this protected status class, they'll be able to retire early, like the field services division, and that would be a benefit to keep people in the jail. You know, unfortunately, you might lose a couple if that starts in right away, because they would be eligible to retire. But ultimately, you know, the long term, it's rare that you hear in an interview somebody's interested in a pension in a long-term career. It's usually like they're here today and they're gone tomorrow, but we may see that trend change. That's all I really have for the recruitment and retention, and I'm certainly open to suggestions. You know, if we have a way, or we know of an event that can help attract candidates, you know, we try to work with the schools. If they're up at the courts to watch the courts, we'll give a tour of our jail. And obviously COVID was a setback for that when we had to limit outside involvement. But I can tell you from my own kids, when they got to tour the facility, the jail was very eye-opening. They really enjoyed that part of so we like to showcase what we have. It's just been kind of tough the last couple of years with the pandemic.
So how can you get some of those Minnesota officers to come over here?
So it is so bad. So years ago, we lost a couple of our people to Minneapolis because they wanted the fast life. They were young guys, and let's face it, Polk County social life is probably not that appealing to a young person. There's much more exciting things in a metropolitan area. They are so down on the job that they will go do other careers before they even ever consider putting a badge on again. I reached out to the union boss over there and said, hey, we're hiring. You know, if you got some good people, send them our way. But they just, and then really it is a wage thing too. They make considerable more money in a metro area. The appeal for us has always been, we get to live where people vacation. If you want to come over here and have a career where people get to vacation, this is really a nice place to live and work. But it's hard. It's really hard to get those people over.
Say we had, you know, trying to do the homegrown type thing. Say we had an incentive program for, you know, you've got a new graduate from Unity that wants to, you know, become a law enforcement officer. Like if we had a program that provided an incentive to put them through the academy, give them a housing incentive or something like that, are we able to tie? I don't want to speak. It sounds negative, but are we able to tie them to like a contract, like to say, if we provide you these things, if you're here for 5 years, or, you know, 10 years, because we have that statewide and nationwide for like teachers. If you provide 10 years of service in this particular type of school, you get this benefit. Are we able to tie anything contract wise? Like that?
So we have looked at that, and we did send 2 people to the Recruit Academy, which is the first time in over 30 years we've ever done that. The state did give us some money for recruitment of law enforcement, and we were able to apply that and send 2 employees to that. But we've looked at with Corp Counsel, can we hold them to a contract? And at the end of the day, technically you can't. It's not worth the paper it's typically written on. You could go through small claims to try to recoup your money, but that's kind of a tough, you know, you don't want to chain somebody down to, you know, if you have an employee that wants to fly away, it's hard to stop that, and you want happy employees. But, you know, that is a good point about, you know, we do have an internship program, and we also have, Mike Severson was a deputy, and I want to mention this too. This Friday is Mike's end of watch day, April 14th. That's when we honor the passing of Deputy Mike Severson. And so anyway, I just want to mention that because there's a scholarship. His legacy is that he wanted a scholarship. And so in all Polk County schools, anybody that wants to pursue a career in law enforcement, we have a scholarship program. And I think they've given over $50,000 away already in that program. So in our hopes is that they come back and want to work here too. And we try to promote that. So with the internship, that's been positive. And we see some kids locally that want to do an internship and they volunteer for the summer and they really get a firsthand look at what law enforcement is all about. And that's been very positive.
Not that you have to focus on like keeping them in the job if they don't want to be there, but, and again, sorry to stick on this, but like you can't say, you know, okay, if we provided you these incentives, but you want to leave after, you know, a shorter period of time than we had originally agreed to, they'd be financially responsible to return an incentive.
There are ways to do it because it happens in a lot of other businesses today.
What's that?
It happens in a lot of other businesses today, so there are ways to do it.
Right.
It's all the bit, it all bears on how you pay them.
Because I 100% agree, because you don't want somebody to grudgingly be here.
Right.
You know, and be unhappy, but if you do those type of things right, you'd have the type of person that would be growing in that position, and maybe I'm being naive, I don't know. But you'd want somebody who would kind of see the value in, like, you know, they provided all these things to me, like, you know, it kind of like supports that root system of somebody who's like, I love this place.
Yep, and we've been very fortunate over the years. This last recruitment was the first time we didn't get any applicants that were sworn law enforcement, that were viable candidates. So we said, well, we're gonna have to sponsor somebody. So it's unique that we've went to that level. And it is a concern. Like I say, that's a big investment. So for almost a year, probably 9 months, we don't get any work out of a new recruit. You got to send them to the 720-hour academy. You have to then go through a several-month field training process here. And then they're out on their own. And you'd hate for them to say, oh, I'm out of here now, because there's jobs everywhere right now. If you look on the employment bulletin, there's not one job, there's hundreds of, there's more jobs than people that are qualified for.
Yeah.
So it is concerning. The biggest thing, and I've talked to the state too, is we get a lot of people from Minnesota that go through their law enforcement academies. They're not eligible to come here and work until they've worked full-time for 2 years over there. So we're missing out on all their new recruits because they would have to come here and do the full academy. They won't grant them reciprocity. So I can hire a full-time officer from Minnesota, but I can't get all their graduates. Like we go to our tech school and say, hey, come work here. It's really, that border is a big hurdle, and I've approached training and standards and complained about that, but they will not change it.
So where do we have to go to get that changed? Because there's no reason that can't be changed. Is that a state level?
It's state level, Department of Justice, absolutely. Because, you know, as a border county, there's a lot of kids graduating from the schools in Minnesota that would be great hires. And in fact, we usually get 1 or 2 applicants every time, and then we gotta file them out.
So not to prolong this, but is there a distinct difference in what Minnesota does in their academy than what Wisconsin does in theirs? Or why would they have a provision like that in place?
It's very slight, and that's why if you're full-time, you can do, I think it's 3 weeks of a reciprocity, or there's just an exam now. Actually, you just have to take an exam, a reciprocity exam, and that just touches on some of the law changes. There's very slight differences in how you do police work nationwide. Most of us all use a standard policy now, Lexipol, which is every state in the nation recognizes Lexipol.
So from your understanding, what's the underlying pull why they won't do that? Where is that being stopped? Is that
Well,
a
it's our-
state issue, or what?
It is. It's the Department of Justice.
So why is the department, what's the underlying reason the Department of Justice doesn't want to open that up?
It's my honest opinion is it's just kind of a bureaucratic, a lot of attitudes on the training and standards, and you know, it doesn't affect anybody in the Madison, Milwaukee area, so they don't care. But we do miss a lot of opportunity for that Minnesota new graduate that has got their skills, and they call it a skills, post skills over there. And once they have that, they got to work full time before they're eligible to come back here. And once they've worked 2 years over there, it's hard to get them back.
I'd imagine if we talk to other counties, they're gonna be singing the same tune as us. Right? Other
Yep.
counties in this northwest area.
Yeah, on the, anywhere on the border,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So maybe we kind of band together our voice there. Right?
Yeah,
I will just end with the fact that staffing truly is what keeps me awake at night. It isn't the thought of a major incident. That's in our comfort zone. It's this fact that what if there's nobody to drive the cars and nobody to man the phones and work the radios? That is concerning. People used to fight over these jobs. I know deputies that started here and for 7 years were the low man on the totem pole because they didn't, you know, there was that much stability in these jobs and that little a turnover. It's not the case anymore. I mean, I actually stress over the fact that we are always short-staffed. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Sheriff. You talk to people too. It's.
You want HR to have the floor for a while? Yep.
Yeah, and I would like to introduce Kim Krieger, who is our new Human Resource Director that we brought in. Very happy to have someone with professional background and expertise. The topic we just discussed is kind of one of her priorities because it's not just Polk County, it's every county in the nation that's going through this. And so in addition, you know, one might say the obvious answer is give us more money. But what we're finding too is that's not the only answer. It's you have to compete in other ways. And, you know, there's some things we can do and we've started working on. So I know Kim has some information about what's happening here.
Hi, thank you for letting me join today. I appreciate the nice warm welcome. Claire, if you're able to open that link, that'd be great. A couple of things that when I first started with the county that I wanted to do to improve our recruitment and retention process is to speed up our recruitment. One of the first things I noticed is it was taking us about 45 days to bring a new hire on. And in this current climate, that is way too long. So we had to speed that up. So we're currently working through training with all of our division directors, managers, supervisors to try to speed that process up, trying to open it up so that we can start having them have access to those applicants as soon as they apply, start doing that hand holding and that communication and start kind of convincing them why Polk County. Because this is a great place to work and we just have to really invest in those candidates so that we get that employment brand out there. One of the other things that we're working on is learning and development. A big part for our employees to stay with a county or any industry is to show that we are invested in them. So one of the things that I'm be working on and training managers on is an individual development plan. And that's where we work with each individual employee, kind of work through what goals do they have? What's inspiring them to stay with the county? What do they still feel like they need to continue that growth and have them stay with us? We're also talking through retirement risk. So we're doing succession planning. So that way we get ahead of any time that somebody would leave and we're actually making plans since we don't have these big vacancies or big spots. The other thing that we're doing for recruitment is getting Polk County's name out into the community outside of just a very small mileage. We're making sure we're in the papers. We're making sure we're on Indeed. We're working with our internal networks on LinkedIn, making sure that we're posting about that, getting really excited, but making sure people can see what we have to offer. So that's just a real quick high level. I'm assuming that the dashboard isn't working, Claire.
I'm not able to pull it up because I don't think Abigail shared it with my account.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was really excited to show you today. One of the big things that we're working on is metrics for HR. So that way we can see specifically, how is our department doing? How many openings do we have? How long is it taking us to fill those? What is our turnover rate? Are we noticing any trends in a specific area? Do we need to look into that a little bit deeper? Since I've been here, we've hired 28 people. So that is a huge plus. In the last 2 weeks, we've already sent out 12 offers. So we are making moves. We are doing what we can to try to improve that. And we are going to be starting to push those career fairs really hard, especially with the high schools and colleges, to try to get Polk County's name into these younger generation and show them that government work is an amazing career, an amazing opportunity. I know that was really quick. Does anybody have any questions?
Sounds like you're making good progress.
I will say this, kind of like what the sheriff talked about is how do we get the word out on the opportunity? You have to compete in the marketplace. You know, the sheriff put out a video. We are putting together a brochure which goes beyond just working here. It says, what are the many benefits that you may not consider? Because we always think of the county of being a great place to work. We've only enhanced that the last couple of years with tuition, reimbursement, improved health benefits each year, those types of things. We've gone to more remote workforce in some cases, more flexibility in hours, those types of things where it's allowed. And I think having that available, much like a video or whatever, we'll have materials in hand. And it's not only for people we're recruiting, but for our existing employees. You know, sometimes you get something and then you still, you know, it's okay, what's next? And so it's a way to remind folks of what all we have.
I mean, the benefits package alone compared to what other companies are offering nowadays is, I mean, that's a real plus from the county perspective.
You'll find it varies and, you know, every time I say that to somebody, they come back with, well, I talked to so-and-so at this company or this county. You're gonna find that one county or that business. And so what we try to do is be toward the upper end of that, not necessarily the top, but toward the top.
We also want to be competitive with those other counties, and benefits are a big part of this. In a study conducted by Amazon, the top 3 reasons people move is health insurance, disability insurance, and your learning and development plans. And this was over 30,000 people. So the biggest thing that I'm trying to teach our managers is to start talking through more along, yep, we have these great benefits, talk through WRS and how that's so unique to government work, but also we're invested in you and we want to see you succeed and we're right behind you. Because that caring that we show really encourages those younger generations to stay with us for a while.
Are you finding that all the departments are like law enforcement, I mean, they have 4 openings? Does every department here have openings?
Not every single department. We did a study recently just to try to do a comparison to our staffing plan, and we are currently as a county about 93% full. Highway still has some openings, CSD, law enforcement, but a lot of our other administrative departments are already full and fully staffed. So right now our biggest priorities are highway and law enforcement to make sure that they are getting the people that they need to get the work done, and that I'm including parks into highway.
How about like Golden Age Manor?
Golden Age Manor hired a separate recruiter just for their efforts.
So you don't really.
I support Kaylee. So I support Kaylee through some of our recruiting efforts. She's also partnering with us to make sure that Polk County as a whole kind of has a good representation. And she is doing a lot of the career fairs. She's doing virtual career fairs and getting our name out to the schools. They're working with a lot of the local colleges, and then they're also trying to work through getting CNAs into specific trainings through St. Croix County and then bringing them back to Golden Age Manor.
She's having a positive impact down there, just having somebody who can dedicate the time to that. So that's something we'll consider here.
Is part of it shut down because of staffing?
Well, they've downsized the number of beds. They've done that now for a couple
Because
of
of
years.
staffing?
Yeah.
Part of it, yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
We need an update regarding the rec center.
You want me up there or can I sit here?
Wherever you want.
For those that aren't familiar, the Polk County Economic Development Corp has put together a board to take over what we once called the sports complex discussion. It's kind of morphed into a rec center, they're calling it now, discussion. That was once handled by the county board and then got handed off to economic development to explore. They're very much still in that exploration phase of everything. Everybody's familiar. We all had the presentation from the consulting firm that gave us that first feasibility study on whether or not the county could support a business in a building like that. And not surprisingly, they came back with a recommendation of yes, that the area could support it. And then after that, the committee that was put together on EDC has tried to put together first a representative group of people. So some of the bigger community institution names that we have on there are people from St. Croix Health, Osceola Medical Center, Amory's, what's Amory's hospital's name?
Regional.
Amory Regional. So representatives from the health organizations, then we've got representatives from places like the St. Croix Valley Hockey Association. So it's trying to get a lot of different stakeholders, and they're still trying to recruit more in the way of representatives from the schools, like athletic directors and things like that, so they can get a good voice from that part of the community as well. So where things are at right now is, number one, they put out a survey to the community, and by no means was this a scientific survey or anything like that. So the results can be taken kind of with a grain of salt because it didn't go out, the methodology isn't perfect or anything. So it just went out to anybody that could take it. So word of mouth spread this survey, and anybody that had it in front of them could respond. And I'll go over kind of what the response was from that in a second. And judging from that response, what that committee's been going through lately is what are the next steps of something like this to gauge interest or to see whether or not it's possible or beneficial to the area. So after that feasibility study was done in phase 1, the next reasonable steps would be 2 more studies, basically, one being the operations study. So what would it cost to operate a facility like this? What kind of jobs and responsibilities would be necessary? What impact would it have on the community and different things like that? So the operational feasibility study, that would be phase 2 with the same consulting firm that did phase 1. But then also a separate funding feasibility study to basically tell us what money is available in Polk County for a project like this. So what total amount of money is available that's out there, and where would it realistically be coming from, and how would we fund a project like this? Because one of the biggest things that we've heard straight from, the jump of this thing is that, like housing and things like that, the county is not in the business of, putting up buildings and providing services like this. It's just facilitating how can we help if it's deemed that something like this is beneficial. One of the ideas coming up being that the county's level of involvement could be just being that level of securing or county-backed securities. So not county funding or anything like that, but any borrowing that would need to be done beyond the fundraising that gets done would be through county-backed securities. And that's not anything that's been agreed to or anything. That's just been the discussion. So not trying to throw you guys under the bus with that. But just for the level of county involvement, that's the discussion of where that's at. Now back to what happened with that survey. We had about 419 respondents. Again, probably not surprisingly because of how it went out, but the overwhelming majority was in favor of an idea like this. And this didn't include a site. It didn't include details on what would be involved or anything like that. It collected information on what type of recreational activities people participate in, what they would like to see, things like that. But of the 419 respondents, they had 230 that responded that they would very much support, so the highest level of support. And then it fell off sharply after that for somewhat support, neutral, somewhat don't support, fully do not support this. And I can get, this data is all in kind of a mess. Like we can present this in a much more wrapped up way at some point if you want, but I think it's kind of a casual survey. So the casual reporting is probably all right. But we asked that question in 2 different ways. The first time was to give us like a gate on a scale of how much you would support a project like this. And then the last question was just flat out, yes or no, would you want to see this in Polk County? And again, it was somewhere around 75-25. Yes, I would. No, I wouldn't. So it feels like to that committee that there is a public interest there for something along these lines. And because of that, the committee has decided to keep going and trying to figure out the path of how they can complete these next 2 studies. And then, so just a heads up that that committee is trying to figure out, let's say realistically, each of those studies cost $40,000. How can they go out to the community, to businesses that would be impacted by something like this, and get them to buy in and provide some, money to begin with to jump into one of those studies. And then potentially to, it could be that that committee comes to this board and says, here's what we've found as far as community support. Here's the money that we've gotten from X number of businesses. Here's the remainder that we have. They might come with that ask. So that's generally where everything is at right now. Since that's been going on for quite some time now, I figured everybody should at least know what's happening with that. And there's to give the other side of that, just that it's not all rose colored glasses. I will say, you know, I'm on that committee. It's very much being looked at, you know, from the perspective of like, okay, if we see this red flag or these multiple red flags, we either need to change something or it's DOA. So nobody's going through it just trying to plow through everything. They're trying to be as reasonable as possible because it's obviously a very big deal. One more thing that just popped into my head with the news of New Richmond's facility that's going up. That committee, our committee is also being much more critical of what we've learned from the consulting company because that project basically came in at half of what that consulting company said our project would look like. And so we basically said, you know, what's going on there? Why are we looking at this higher price tag when New Richmond came in, you know, much lower than that? So the critical eye is definitely out there for what's a reasonable thing that could happen with an idea like this.
I think the idea with turning it over to this committee was to say, okay, this is not going to be a county facility. You know, we may be involved or whatever. So let's see what the public does. Let's kind of see if there's enough interest out there where people say, I want to get involved behind this, invest in it, whatever. And so I think this survey was just a way to start. May or may not be something we do. It's kind of interesting though. It's in my limited research myself of when I head downtown or whatever, it's kind of like the highways this time of year. They're talking to me about, we got to fix the highways. We got to get these roads, the potholes are terrible. Same thing. I saw a couple of baseball coaches the other day, you know, scratching their head, paying so much money a week to go someplace else, drive indoors and practice. And we're seeing more, you know, of an interest now from those people. They're starting to speak up. So the point is, this is going to evolve, I think, over time. I don't think it's anything that this board needs to say unless there's, you know, you guys decide, but I think it's something where we keep our ears open. We assess, we determine if this is something that's worthwhile. I know we will find more information, you know, for example, I haven't analyzed it yet, but the state just does a yearly or an annual healthcare report card. And an area where Polk County was deemed low was in, and you'll get more information on this, was in the area of recreation facilities and outdoor activities and things like that. So you'll hear this stuff, people will use it. So I think just keeping an open mind on this going forward, we might hear more as we go.
Anybody else want to comment? All right, we're gonna have a discussion regarding the meeting start time.
Yeah, and the county clerk has talked to me and we've discussed starting times, and she made some very good points to me as to, hey, is it possible to change this time? And I thought they were reasonable arguments. So I thought I'd let our clerk speak up and just give her opinion and ask the question.
I'm just asking if we can move it back like half an hour. We had an issue where we had two staff that were sick, election staff that needed to go out, and appointments coming in that morning that had to have phone calls and everything before that, 8:30 start time. It makes it really difficult in the situation of an emergency like that. Or this morning, we have our machine maintenance for election equipment is next door, and the guy came and there's possibly no power over there and a key is missing and all that fun stuff, and no contingency plan because there's no other staff here to discuss and make a plan with before the meeting starts. So that was my issue. And of course, it's up to you guys. So if we could move it back even 15 minutes to, 9 o'clock, 8:45, 9 o'clock would be much appreciated.
And the county opens for business at 8:30?
At 8:30, so other staff is not here until 8:30, so.
Well, we used to be at 10. This committee was a 10 o'clock meeting, and everybody wanted to start earlier in the morning than 10. What would the committee think of 9 o'clock start?
Health and Human Services does 9 o'clock, so I mean, it's not like it's impossible. I just I think I was the squeaky wheel before, because I said with, my full-time job, it's as early as possible is what I would prefer. So whatever everybody else thinks is reasonable, I'll go to the earliest time you think is reasonable.
I'm on Ryan's court completely. One of the most dysfunctional things about this board is it's not conducive to the constituents of this county. If you've got a full-time job, it's really hard to be on this county board. I'm sorry, that's the facts. So if you are working full-time, we either need to put it at the end of the day or the beginning of the day if we're gonna continue to get people that aren't retired onto this board. Because you can't go in the middle of the day. In my case, I have 45 minutes to travel, half hour to travel, depends which location I go to. If I put that in the middle of the day, that takes up twice as long as the meeting. If it's at the beginning or the end of the day, I can coordinate my travel back to my residence, wherever you're at in the county. So it's a working man's deal, working person's deal. If you want to be on this board, you either have to have a lot of flexibility in your career, which not everybody has, and I didn't for the first 30 years of my career. Now I do. But I don't think we're going to be able to get more people that can represent our constituents the right way in the workforce and be on this board. Very difficult issue. I know you get slammed with it, and I know it's not necessarily fair to you, but I don't know how we improve that process unless we bring our committee meetings to the evening, which I don't think your staff wants to do either.
Right, and I'm very lucky. I work remote and I'm basically 2 hours ahead of most of the people I work with on the West Coast. And if it wasn't for that, like I wouldn't be able to do this. Like if I didn't work remote and probably didn't have the 2 hour buffer that I have on those other folks, like I wouldn't be able to balance job and this. So with the long-term look of like, trying to get people to be able to do this, we do need to keep that in mind.
And each committee gets to pick their start times. And I fully understand the commitment of a working person and the start time, but it's up to us five right here. A future person they can start at 6:30 in the morning if they want. I'm in for that.
I started at 6:30 today.
Oh, I was halfway done.
Well, you have to fully understand too, I mean, if Shabana comes in here, at a meeting that's gonna start at 8:30 and she's in here at whatever, 8 o'clock or whatever time, and now help doesn't show up and she needs to be in this meeting or one of her staff in here. I understand. I mean, I would have no issue going to 9. But it's whatever the committee
I'm okay with it.
flavor is.
I'm okay with it. I mean, I don't have a problem.
Going to
9 is
9.
better than 10.
It is, it's an hour sooner. Yeah, I never liked the 10 o'clock. I never knew why we met at 10, but.
That was after the exec committee.
It's after coffee for retired guys.
Yeah, they got
Yeah, it was right after the exec, because it was exec and then.
Right.
This.
How about you, Jay? Where are you at?
Well, don't interfere with my 1 o'clock nap.
So as long as the meeting was done by 1 o'clock, you'd be okay to start a little bit later.
Right. I don't care, yeah, but I'm interested in Rook's appointment or position on the time, and that should be something that's considered in every committee.
It's probably a much bigger issue than we
Yeah.
should even be
Yeah,
talking
I-
about in this
yeah.
group,
I agree with
I
that.
agree.
but
But it's a valid issue.
I think so. And that's something we can address at a different level, but.
Because that's the thing, we want to be careful about what if we talk about too early, then like you said, we might talk about evenings and nobody's gonna want to do that.
Well,
depends how much involvement you want to get. That's the real issue.
All right, so for right now, we're gonna move the meeting time to 9 o'clock done.
You need a motion?
Well, I don't think we need a
Nah.
motion. I mean, we get to pick our own.
just pick our time.
It's just that we need a consensus is what we need.
Yes.
I think we're all in
I say yes.
All right.
How about the rest of you?
Yes.
Yep, all right, consensus.
All right, the next meeting will be at 9 AM.
All right.
Thank you.
How's our work plan look? We got to review or update it?
I looked at it. Jumped out.
You just see that we continue to move budget up in timing. I think next month is our first month, right, to begin discussions and trends on it. We'll also be able to talk more about county board priorities. Thank you all, by the way, for your participation. We are compiling and gathering good information about what we want to make kind of the big picture items going forward. So we'll be announcing, rolling that out at the board meeting next week, I think.
Anybody got anything they want to add to the work plan? If not, how about subject matters for our next meeting? We have quite a few things on the work plan.
Yeah, and we might have, we were just talking, we might have a resolution or two coming from a supervisor dealing with some funding things, but I haven't gotten the specifics on that.
But it looks like we're gonna have discussion on the contracts. Board priorities, review investment policies.
Yeah.
Start discussion on the budget. All right, if anyone has any other items that they want to get on the agenda, just talk to Vince or talk to somebody and get
Vince or Dawn.
Get it on the agenda so we can discuss it. If there's nothing else, we have one piece of business to conduct yet.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. And adjourned at 9:30. 8.